This is a chapter talking about middle-aged individuals. Whenever I ask my students, when is middle age, it's just interesting to hear all their answers. In almost every class, someone says middle age starts at 25. Anyway, no, it's fine. It's just an opinion thing, right? But in fact, most of the textbook put middle age going from 40 to 60, or a lot of the later textbooks have pushed it back even to 45 to 65, because people are, delaying child rearing or childbearing, and they're, taking longer to develop their careers and that sort of thing. And they're healthier. So a lot of newest books have pushed it back even a little bit more to 45 to 65. This chapter talks about health of midlife individuals. It also talks about relationships. It talks about jobs. I have to tell you, midlife for most people is a happy, healthy time of life. They're still in good physical health, and many times they've reached the apex of their career, so they have more spending money, more leisure time, and oftentimes those that are in a relationship that stood the test of time are oftentimes very satisfied. As a matter of fact, if you ask elderly women what was your happiest time of life, they oftentimes say their 50s. And so this is really an exciting and wonderful time for most individuals. Now, if we're looking at physical changes as people mature into midlife, there are some negatives. I have to tell you, before the age of 35, the number one cause of death is accidents. But from 35 and on, now illness overtakes accidents as being the number one cause of death. Heart disease, of course, is number one, and then cancer number two, and so on. And I may come back to heart disease and cancer in just a few minutes. But anyway, let's just talk about general physical health of midlife individuals. We know that from the 20s up to about 55, your height remains relatively stable. After that, there is a gentle but sure kind of settling. The spine, begins to crunch down together, and bones become a little more frail, and so people are a bit more stooped. Women lose on the average 2 inches in height, and men lose on the average 1 inch in height from about 55 until old age. And part of this may be due to osteoporosis. Now, women are more at risk for osteoporosis, and thin people are more at risk for osteoporosis. And this is when your bones become very fragile and brittle, and you become more stooped. And they can break, too, which can be quite dangerous as people age. But it's not inevitable. I mean, we can eat a calcium-rich diet. Women may choose some medications that can help to cause their bones to strengthen, including estrogen replacement therapy for some women. And also, any kind of weight-bearing activity, exercise, causes our bones to build up density and be strong. It's never too young to start that, exercising to build up the strength of your bones, and it's never really too late either. Even in old age, exercise can strengthen your bones. And so there's height. And then there's also weight. The middle-age spread, they oftentimes call it. Even people who have never had a weight problem their whole life may, for the first time, find themselves on a diet. And that is, as people become more sedentary and all of that, they're not burning off as many calories as they did when they were younger. And so obesity becomes more of a risk at this age. And that, of course, can bring right along with it all of its problems like heart disease and diabetes and other kinds of things. So it's important to keep your weight in check. And this also is something that's not inevitable. In midlife, people can start not only an exercise program, but a more nutritious and more balanced and more carefully controlled diet. And some people, this is a time when they really jump on it because they notice that they're starting to gain some weight and they don't want to. And so they really are more careful at that age about exercising and diet. As a matter of fact, as much as we talk about exercise, by the way, only about 10% of Americans get the right amount of exercise. And that's about 5 times a week for half an hour. Well, that's more than most people do, let's face it. But anything you can do to get active certainly can help out. Okay, then there is also reaction time. And this doesn't change much in midlife. Maybe a teeny bit slower, but it's so little that, in fact, midlife individuals are less likely to have accidents in the workplace as well as in cars than younger individuals. And so whatever little bit of difference there is, it doesn't seem to be bothering us. Maybe we have less accidents because we're more experienced and we've developed expertise at driving and all of that. And then there is also physical strength. And physical strength does decline about 10% in midlife. But most people wouldn't even notice that, because how often is it that you have to use 100% of your strength? It's not very often. However, I will say that there are sometimes occasions. My husband and I together have a bunch of children, and many of them are in their 20s, and they're always moving. And whenever they move, they call me up for help. Come on and help me move, you know. And it never fails. They're in a third-story apartment, and there's no elevator. I remember some time ago helping my daughter move, and she's on the top end of some heavy piece of furniture, and I'm on the bottom, and we're going around these curvy stairs, and there's this banister we got to get over, and I'm like an inch from the top. And I just can't get it over. And she's saying, Mom, push. And I said, I am pushing. You know, I was literally maxed out. I couldn't push one more bit. And so, yeah, once in a while, but very rarely do we ever experience having to use 100% of our strength. Okay, when it comes to sexuality in midlife, in fact, it's pretty similar to when you were younger. Surprisingly, they used to think that most couples had intercourse, a couple times a week. Now they know for most couples, in fact, it's not a couple of times a week, it's a few times a month. You know, maybe 3 times a month or so, and 2 for some couples. And so that doesn't change much from midlife to the younger years, unless perhaps a woman doesn't have an available partner because of divorce and hasn't remarried, or perhaps through death or something like that, or a man maybe loses a partner. But the amount of sexuality doesn't really change that much from younger years to the midlife. What they do know, and I'll mention this again with older age, is that, matter of fact, I'll save that for older age. We'll talk about sexuality in old age as well. Okay, and so then there are some things that do change in midlife. For example, menopause. Women start menstruating about 12 and a half years old on the average, and they menstruate all the way until they're about 50. Well, in fact, I should say 49. By about 50, women are said to have gone through menopause. And menopause means that you have not had a menstrual period for 1 solid year. And by the way, let me tell you, menopause is not a disease. It's just a normal state that women go through. And most women go through it perfectly unscathed. I mean, I would say the most common symptom for women would be those hot flashes where you wake up at night and, you're just like overheated, or it could happen during the day. And some women have that happen hundreds of times a night. And so they get up the next day and they're tired and confused and have trouble focusing and all of that. And they wonder, is it midlife? No, it's sleep deprivation, because you're being awakened. Even if you don't fully wake up, those hot flashes can pull you up out of the deeper stages of sleep into light sleep. So you wake up the next day and you feel not fully rested. Other things, some women have heart palpitations or dizziness. Some women may experience anxiety or depression, but that may be related not so much to physical changes or hormonal changes, but rather to the double standard that our society has about aging. We accept it more so, it seems, in men than we do in women. And so women may worry, how will people look at me at work? Will they respect me? Will my spouse still find me attractive, and all that? And so some of that emotional reaction may be partially just worrying about how society will accept her as she's obviously aging. In general, though, I said most women go through that just fine. Some women don't have any symptoms at all. Only about 10% do have significant distress during this period of time, and for them, certainly medication can help. For almost anybody, it'll knock out those hot flashes right away, like estrogen replacement therapy. But if you have breast cancer and other things like that in your family, you might want to really carefully consider it, because it does increase the chance of that. Okay, males do go through some climateric changes as well as they age, but it's not quite as obvious as for females. For example, men may sexually slow down just a little bit, but most men enjoy sexual encounters throughout all of midlife and really don't seem to have any problem at all. And if they do, they can take medication. They can take testosterone or other male hormones to kind of rev up their not only their desire but their abilities. Or there's other medications like drugs that were formerly used for heart conditions and whatnot, which can just increase their ability to have sex if they're having difficulty with erections and all that. But most men, in fact, are fine. I mean, they go through midlife and don't seem to have a problem at all. let's see if I want to talk about it. Oh yeah, heart disease and cancer are the number 1 and 2 killers, and they do strike in midlife for some individuals, males more likely than females. And there's risk factors for that. If we watch our diet and we exercise, we watch fat, we watch cholesterol, and we keep our weight down, we are much less likely to perish from heart disease in middle age. Cancer also has its risk factors, not smoking, as I mentioned before, and also watching our diet and exercising can help with that, and staying away from other carcinogens, cancer-causing elements in our environment. And so, in addition to those deadly diseases, many midlife people, not many, but some do have other chronic disorders like arthritis or hypertension or other things. But for the most part, I want to emphasize most midlife people are very happy, well-adjusted, and healthy. Okay, that's it for that chapter.